What's up, guys? Sub-Zerek here, not actually for a VOD review. Today, I'm going to be talking about the state of balance for set 14 because it's become apparent that the balance is not amazing right now. I will just say it's not very good. I'm somebody who loves TFT and enjoys every single patch of TFT. Honestly, if they completely had the worst balance of all time, I would still enjoy it. And so I hope that gives my words a little bit more gravity. I'm not somebody who is a complainer so much. I'm somebody who loves TFT. I talk a lot to Kai and Damascene Raptor and other people in my circle, and all of them are like, this guy, like, he'll just call any TFT set good. So I feel like that gives me a unique position to talk through kind of how I'm seeing the current meta right now, the current patch, and just where we're going with TFT and balance in general. But to give you guys a sense, if you are not in the loop and you haven't been paying super close attention to the meta and this kind of stuff, Kevin Parker today tweeted, he was, in the EMEA finals. He tweeted this, I think maybe during maybe between games or something, worst TFT patch for competitive of all time. I'm serious. People said 9.5. He said it's worse than that. People said Syndra, Ari meta. He said it's worse than that. And I don't think this is an insane... Yeah, this is his opinion, and I don't think it's that crazy of an opinion. Dasic got eliminated day one of the EMEA tournament, the cup. Said, I'm out after 1 day and 4 games, and I'm happy about this. This tournament on this patch is one of the worst experiences I've ever had in TFT. Play TFT, enjoy it. Don't force yourself. Focusing on 4v4. See you next week. Watanabe Kai said, riveting meta. Look, Kai, maybe, never mind. Actually, you know what? Kai Watanabe is a wonderful content creator and friend, and I wish him all luck in all aspects of his life. Michael TFT tweeted, out of the cup day one, I'm not even really sad. The balance team is doing a terrible job this set. The only ones that affected are us. Now to think about EWC, which is the most important thing we have this year. So a lot of people obviously very upset about the balance right now. And were it just that this patch, the balance is off, I can accept that. I can accept that a patch's balance is not very good. But there's also kind of another slightly scary thing. Tab over to here. This is talking about the new changes that are coming out on this coming Wednesday. Grea nerf Vex Buffs, which we'll give a little bit more context to that later. Last time I was this shocked by Mortdog was, and this is Mortdog talking about Void Assassins, which I think... I wasn't even playing TFT back then. This was September 16th, 2019. But I believe, for the TFT boomers, you can comment down below and tell me. I believe this was a historically unbalanced comp. Literally, I miss Void Sins is the name of a high elo player because he was so influenced by this comp. So if Milk is saying the last time he was this shocked is when there was a historically completely broken comp that demolished a patch, obviously a little bit scary. There's also this clip from Dish Soap that was going around a little bit, so I'll just play this real quick. Do I have? Yeah, I have 1x speed. Okay. This was after he got eliminated in the cup, I believe.
Fuck. I want to stream, but bro, no one is streaming last patch. No one. That shit is so bad. Or this patch, I guess. And I'm kind of predicting next patch is also probably going to be really bad. So I don't really know when the good time is to stream.
So Dish Soap obviously...
I want to stream, but
replayed. So Dish Soap and Milk obviously expressing this thought that next patch is probably not going to be that much better. Now, why are they saying this? This is a tweet from Dasic. Honestly, it's probably better for me to hop to this slide, really this slide first, which is the patches for next chat. This is all of them screenshotted. And, some strange outliers. Vexotech, probably the best, AP comp in the game, is getting multiple buffs, actually. Vex is not only getting buffed, but they're also buffing Gragas, who is one of the tanks that you play around in this comp. Brand, which, AP Brand feels like the worst. Well, okay, not the worst, but certainly a step down from the Vexotech line, is getting nerfed, albeit it's a small nerf. But why is this line getting nerfed? You look to things like Street Demons, and for whatever reason, 7 Street Demon is getting buffed, even though this is the dominant variation of Street Demon that's being played. And then Rengar is getting nerfed, even though Rengar is really not the issue in this comp. It's Jinx who is the main carry in this comp, and in similar ways. Vayne is getting nerfed even though she's kind of paying the sins for Jarvan being a broken unit. This Vayne unit is not overtuned. Jarvan is overtuned. You remember before Jarvan was buffed so hard, this Vayne comp was completely playable. And obviously, levers move around all the time. You know, you can nerf the Vayne comp by nerfing Vayne or by nerfing Jarvan. And if they think it's better to nerf Jarvan in this comp than to nerf Vayne, I think that's completely reasonable. But there are a lot of things that I do think are not that reasonable. Dasic, who, you know, has been a little bit of a little controversial figure when Mortog tweeted at him and said, you know, Dasic, you're bringing a lot of negativity. Dasic actually, I think, put out a fantastic tweet talking about what needs to be fixed right now. And there's a lot, right? When he's talking about reverts, he says revert almost all of the changes in these patch. Say basically revert Brand, revert Rengar nerf, revert Vayne nerf, revert Veigar nerf, revert Lucky Gloves nerf, revert Vex buff, revert Alistar buff, revert all of this stuff, and then fix this other stuff. You know, why is forward thinking, since they buffed it last set, been one of the best econ augments in the entire game and just stayed like that, essentially? Why has Sejuani been able to cast, you know, multiple times? She's an AP, or not AP, but she's a caster tank. You know, if you compare Sejuani to like set 11, like Nautilus or something like that, I'm trying to remember one of the most recent examples, but that one is like stuck in my head for some reason. You know, you're really happy with when your Vow Nautilus casts once. This Sejuani unit is regularly casting multiple times per fight. It's not really on balance for a unit like this, and no touches to her. He also doesn't even talk about MF here, but MF not being touched as well, which is a line that feels really, really rough to play. Galemify and Dumbify being really, really broken. Pair of Fours being so strong this set. Restart Mission Kingslayer being so strong this set. Remove Starry Night, or at least, you know, balance it at something like that. I mean, talking about, yeah, all these units that need buffs. Misfortune needs buffs. Skarner, Alawi, Graves, Renekton, like all of these item balance artifacts, right? What's going on? Why aren't artifacts being changed whatsoever? Manazane needs to be nerfed. Silvermere Dawn needs to be, you know, tweaked around a little bit like this. Unending Despair needs to be nerfed. Sniper's Focus needs to be nerfed. And these are being completely unchanged. And so I think Dasic actually did a fantastic job. If everything that Dasic said here got changed, I'm not going to say that we would be in a perfectly balanced set, but I think this would be a really good step in the right direction for a big patch. And so a lot of this is to say, like, last patch was not a good patch. Next patch, people are afraid of it being a bad patch. And this is actually really, really consequential. I mean, part of what Dasic talked about in his tweet is that, you know, a lot of people are playing 4v4, you know, to qualify for Esports World Cup on this. If you don't care whatsoever about playing Esports World Cup, which is a huge source of income for a lot of TFT players, there's also the fact that there is this set. At the end of this set, they're basically going to inaugurate people into this TFT, like kind of like pro league, like a tier 1 system where these people are going to stay in the league for like an entire set. And, you know, they're going to get guaranteed to be able to play in these high level tournaments that are going to have good prizing. And it's supposed to be a stabilizing factor for people who want to play competitive TFT. And feels really bad that those people have to play competitive TFT on a set that just feels not so great, right? It feels very imbalanced, and it feels like very strong players are getting eliminated left and right. I mean, people talked about an APAC Titans Cup title got day one, you know, Dish Soap got day one in an A Cup. You know, a lot of fantastic players got day one in all of these cups all around the world. YBY1 destroyed day one in APAC Cup and then got day two. Like these results feel very inconsistent, and it's because I think because the balance is not great. That doesn't mean that there's no edges to be found in the people who won the cups in APAC, Americas, and EMEA. They're all obviously fantastic players, and so shout outs to them. Like they did a good job playing on what I would say is a you know, a more difficult patch to really find your edges in, but you know, TFT is a game with a lot of skill expression, so they can still find their edges. So that's part of why it is an issue. But yeah, like there's another piece of it as well, which is kind of like, how did we get here? And I wanted to pull up this clip actually. Yes, this clip from only 3 months ago when Mort was doing this kind of like AMA on his stream, answering a bunch of questions. And I'm going to put this on 2xp because it's pretty long, but I do think it's actually pretty, it's an interesting clip to look at, you know, now like in hindsight. So yeah, let me just play this.
Will there be a point when a patch is way too balanced that you don't really need to change anything in the next patch? Is that even possible? So we're getting pretty close to that. But what's really interesting is I've been thinking about this a lot, is, you know, what competitive TFT players want and what the balance means and things like that. And I think when things are imbalanced, like TFT is a game of variance. And so if you, like, let's use numbers. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna do this. Hang on. I'm gonna do this. This will be helpful. Okay, to oversimplify here, let's assume there are 3 compositions in TFT, and one is a power level of 60, one is a power level of 50, and one is a power level of 40, right? There's 3 compositions. And there are different TFT is a game of variance, right? And so while the baseline power might be 60, if you high roll, it's going to be 70, and if you low roll, it's going to be 50, right? And so if you high roll this one, it'll be like 65, and if you low roll, it'll be 45, and if you high roll this one, it's going to be 60, and if you low roll this one, it's going to be 30, right? Like these are abstract number values for the comp. And the thing that TFT competitive players liked before when the game was imbalanced is that they could identify these compositions, which would help give them an advantage over the variance of low rolling and beat somebody who might be, right around here playing a weaker comp, but they're high rolling. But when every composition is 50, then all of a sudden there's no agency in figuring out ways to increase your power level short of the variance attributions within the game. And so we're at this interesting point now where the question is TFT good if everything is a 50? Or are we supposed to actually purposely put things like this? But the thing is, there isn't enough content in the game because there's so little content. It's pretty easy to go, well, there's only 12 forecasts. This is the one that's got the 60, so I should go for that, right? And then everyone can test it. And so there's a fundamental design theory thing about like balance in the game. But until we figure out a solution to this sort of problem, the goal is still to get everything here. And again, we're really, really close to that. But that doesn't mean that's the best play experience, right? And so I don't know. I've been spending the last few weeks in my mind thinking about stuff like this and trying to see what that means for TFT.
So, and now let me just pull up a video to play in the background while I do the rest of my yapping, because I've brought in all of my sources. So let's watch a game from
green room, laundry room. Laundry room is a dead end, unfortunately. Let's take middle room on this one.
Where's Northern Line coming from?
Man.
Oh, there we go. How did I get it? Oh, it auto played into a Northern Line blueprints video. Shout outs to Northern Line. Okay, so I don't know how long I'm gonna yap for this. By the way, we're probably not gonna make it through the full snooty game. So honestly, let's just skip like halfway through the video. Though, and honestly, I overestimate usually how much I'm gonna underestimate usually how much I'm gonna yap. So let's just play it through here. Okay, so that last Mortal clip I think is really interesting to watch in hindsight because a lot of people will complain and be like, balance has been horrible recently, and I think that's a completely unfair thing to say. I think last set was one of the most balanced TFT sets of all time. We had people complaining that the set was too balanced, that people were like, it's so boring. Like, we're barely getting any changes because the set's just too balanced. Like, all the comps are viable. Like, this sucks. Like, and it was actually a legitimate question. Is it a problem when the game is too balanced? Should you shift things around a little bit and just say, okay, this comp gets, its time in the sun, and then, nerf that comp a little bit, and then another comp gets its time in the sun, and like, yeah, not everything's perfectly balanced, and that's fine. We want to shift things around a lot to give people an interesting play experience. Like, that was actually a discussion that was had, and it's just completely insane to me that, we went from that to a set where I feel like balance has been really, really rough. And I want to give, the benefit of the doubt to, Mortog, the dev team, everybody. This is the second patch of the set, and we're about to go into the third patch of the set. And then, you have the B patch that happened. There has been no B patch this patch, which is another huge thing that I want to talk about. But we're very early on into the set. So maybe we go from here. Balance is really rough. And then, next patch, maybe balance is even rough there, but maybe the patch after that, they really like hit their stride. And then for the rest of the set, the game is, perfectly balanced, and it's the greatest set balance-wise of all time, and people just, forget about the early set balance. I mean, maybe that's going to happen. But I do think we're off to a bad start, and I don't really like the trajectory. That's the other thing, is that this is the reason why I brought up, dish soap and milk yapping about next patch, because I feel like next patch looks pretty bad. I feel like the changes in next patch just don't really move us towards a more balanced state of TFT, which is scary because, obviously we're going to have more. We have I'm gonna be playing in the open tournament, the the sub-regional tournament on next patch, which is happening next weekend. If you guys haven't signed up for that, I think signups are opened for a little bit. Look up like NA sub-regional or go to like the TFT competitive. If someone reminds me, I'll put a link in the comments down below. But I mean, I'm gonna be playing a tournament on that patch, which can potentially qualify me to the trials, potentially qualify me towards a cup. There's a little bit of prize money involved in there as well. And so, that's consequential for me. People are going to be, playing Esports World Cup tournaments and stuff like that, which I don't know the timing for all those. I don't really care to focus that much on that kind of stuff. But, that is something else that is, very consequential for all of these players. And so, if we end up in a situation where the first patch, which the trials and the cup was played on, ends up being the second patch, which Trials and Cup end up playing on, is not great patch, and the next patch is rough. I mean, that is a huge dent in the set. I mean, these sets these days, are long, but they're not that long. If you have 2 bad patches, that is a month. With if you don't have B patches in between, that is a month of bad TFT, and a month of bad TFT, that is a huge portion of the set. So I don't think, like, I want to give the devs and everybody the benefit of the doubt and say like, okay, maybe this patch was a miss and they know it was a miss. And as long as they can hit next patch, everything will be fine. But if they miss next patch, which it looks like they're going to, that's really rough, I would say. And so the other thing that I kind of alluded to a little bit there is the craziness to me. If you guys remember, this patch came out, and 24 hours into the patch, we knew that Halabozeri was disgustingly OP. So that was the case. We knew that Vayne was disgustingly OP. And then as we got further on the patch, other things developed, right? We didn't actually know the Vexotech comp was really good. If you guys, like I had a video that came out, like a few days into the patch, and people are like discovering this Vexotech comp. And then, more and more people played it and realized, wait, this comp's actually like insanely good. And so I would say, though, I was really surprised. I put out, a video talking about, the changes. And like when I did that video talking about, I think it was a Vayne reroll game, or it was some kind of game on the new patch. I was kind of like, there's probably going to be a V patch. I mean, like obviously this Jarvan buff was way too much. Obviously this Halobo comp is just like way too unreasonable. So there'll probably be a B patch. It's fine. And then, the few days, and I was actually really afraid. Patch comes out Wednesday. We have a tournament on Saturday. I was really afraid that they were going to be patched too late, that they were going to be patched on like Friday or something. And then I was going to have like one day to learn a patch. And then I was going to have to play tournament, with 1 day of prep. I guess I didn't have to worry about that because we didn't have that issue. We just never be patched, which is crazy. I thought, okay, we came out of the trials. I, got eliminated in the trials, and I had a pretty rough run of it, but I can just blame the patch. Yay. So at least that's something there. I can blame the patch. But I got through the trials. And I said, okay, you know what? Maybe Riot doesn't really care that much about the trials players. They're like, it's not that important if they have a really good competitive environment. But surely for this cup, right? For the most competitive, the most important set in history for competitive TFT, they got to nail the balance for the cup. We got to have a B patch starting early that week. No B patch that week. And we went into this cup with, a historically bad balanced patch. And I mean, you end up with a lot of people complaining, a lot of people who I at least am in this situation where I make TFT, I'm more of a content creator than I am a pro player. I hate to admit it, but my content is a much higher source of my revenue than my competitive TFT games. And also I have a real job. So if TFT exploded tomorrow, I would be, okay. I would be very sad, of course, but I would be okay. But there are people out there who are staking their livelihood on competitive TFT. There's people who are saying, if I do well in this TFT tournament, I mean, for someone like Snooty Boo, well, Snooty Boo's actually not that great of an example because he's someone who's doing, pretty well in the content as well. So if he had gotten day one of this tourney, I think he would have been fine. But maybe for somebody like Grea, who won the Americas, tournaments, Grea gets guaranteed regionals from this, which means he is pretty much guaranteed to be in this new TFT competitive format. My nose is just so itchy. I swear to God, I don't do any kind of illicit drugs, by the way, that have to deal with my nose. My nose just gets so itchy during videos. I don't know what the deal is. But for somebody like Grea, that could actually be Grea's sign to say I'm going to go full-time TFT, because I know I'm going to be in this league, which is going to give me a certain amount of revenue, a certain amount of notoriety. I'm going to get there, which is amazing, for someone like him. And so with a set that is so consequential, it's shocking to me that they didn't actually decide to, do a B patch. And I think that is strange to me, especially coming out of last set, where, there were many times where and I want to go actually pull up the data, but if somebody has the data out there, please let me know of going through all the patches of last set and saying how many patches were B patches and how many were not. Because I remember there being a decent amount of B patches, but I've said this time and again, or at least I've at least thought it time and again. I don't mind if there's a B patch at all. If Riot drops the worst patch of all time, and then 24 hours later they B patch, and it's all of a sudden the best patch of all time, I have no qualms with that. If that is the deal with the devil that I could make, that would happen every single patch, I would be perfectly fine with that. Also, pause in the middle of roll down, what? That's so sad. We can skip through this pause here, but yeah, if that's the deal with the Mort Dog, the Shadow Mort Dog that I would have to make, I'm totally fine with that. And I've said this many times before, I think. I've at least thought it many times before, as I just said. I'm fine because if you have to wait a day for a B patch, who cares? As long as we get to the correct balance state. And so I don't understand why there was no B patch this previous patch. And this makes me more scared for next patch, because last patch I said, you know what, they missed the mark, they're going to be patch, it'll be fine. They don't be patch. Okay. So what happens if this patch, which like I said, looks like it's going to miss the mark, what happens if it misses the mark and then we also don't be patch for that? That's, like I said, that's a full month. That's a full month that you have to play on a bad TFT set. I really hope they're open to be patching next patch. I mean, if they are, I hope that we get it relatively soon. If everyone's doom and gloom about this next patch is, comes to pass, which I think it's very possible that it might. If it doesn't, then I mean, great. Obviously, I'm always rooting for TFT to do well, for it to be a fun game, for it not to be bad. For everyone to have a blast, for it to be perfectly balanced, for everyone to love the set. I'm always rooting for that. But is that going to happen? I mean, I guess we'll see. We'll see with next patch. But I just don't really understand. I've heard some rumors that kind of like the balance team is having some issues in TFT. Like I don't want to like speculate too much because I really have no idea what's going on, the inner workings of TFT. So like I don't really want to speculate on anything. But I have. It would make sense if there was some issue with the balance team being able to do a really, really good job, because I mean it seems like stuff is really rough right now. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes for Riot, but it almost seems like there is some kind of issue behind the scenes, because like how could we end up in a world where there's no B patch? I mean, it's also like, if it's an issue with just like having enough time to balance, or enough like like enough people, I still think a B patch, unless it requires like a lot of, and once again, I don't know how all the technical stuff works, I can't imagine a B patch that just reverts the Jarvan nerf would really be that difficult to push out. But once again, I'm talking on my ass here, so I don't want to talk too hard on that. So where, and one last, I guess, kind of point before I talk into solutions. A lot of people have made the point that, well, the reason why set 13 was so much more balanced than set 14 is because set 13 was the set that the Macau Open was played on. It was the Arcane set. That was a set with a lot more production value. They created all of these new units for it. That was the set that, they wanted to invest in. And what the kind of like curve of TFT looks like as far as sets go is that, we have these less invested in sets. People talk about it as like sacking sets, where Riot's just going to kind of sack this set and say, you know what, this set, we know it's not going to be amazing, but like that's fine because we're going to invest a lot harder in future sets. And I said this, I was talking to Kai, I don't think, maybe, no, Kai was streaming and I was yapping in his chat because people were yapping about this patch. And yeah, like I don't mind. I do not mind them sacking sets. If this set has to be a little rough for it to turn set 16, Paris Open set to be the greatest set of all time, and I get to go to the Paris Open, I get to play a super well balanced set and like have an awesome time, and like it's super high production value and everything. I don't mind that. I don't mind that whatsoever. But I do think there is a bar that needs to be cleared. You need to clear a bar of acceptable balance, and I don't think this patch clears that, and I'm afraid that next patch won't clear it either. That's what I'm quite afraid of. And if we have two patches in a row that don't clear acceptable, I mean, I've made my point there. And so that's where I'm at. I'm fine with them quote unquote sacking sets. If you asked, Mortog, do you sack certain sets? Like he would probably say, oh, we invest a lot in other, certain sets, but like obviously we don't want any set to be a bad set. If you do end up in this world where sets are like actively seen as like sacked sets, where people realize like, you know what, this set is just kind of going to kind of suck, that does become very problematic for TFT, because you end up in a world where people are like, okay, I'm going to skip this entire set. And I mean, that's a third of the year that you're skipping is just kind of unsustainable for TFT. So I do think it's fine for, you to have a set like set 10 where you invest all this money and time in like making the music really cool, or, set 13 where you create all these new units and you make sure the balance is really good. That's perfectly fine. But I do think you do still need to, if you're going to do that, make sure the sets that you are sacking, or the sets that have less investment, make the balance at least acceptable in those sets, and make those sets at least acceptable, right? If Riot put out just a completely untenable project that was like a buggy mess and everything, then obviously people wouldn't stand for that. So that's where I'm at. And then the last piece of it, which I kind of talked about, is like, what is the solution to this? I mean, in my opinion, like I said, I'm perfectly fine if they take a more heavy-handed approach on B-patching. If I don't understand how they did not B-patch last set, and it must be something going on behind the scenes of Riot that I don't know about, is the reason why they didn't B-patch, because I cannot understand how you could not at least put out a patch that was revert the Jarvan buff and nerf Hollow Bow, just nerf the numbers on it. I know the interaction where it stacked up and up and up was like a bug, but I mean, you have to balance around that. I mean, they can't probably get a bug fix in a B patch, so they have had B patches before that have bug fixes. But if they can't get a bug fix in, then okay, that's fine. Then just revert that and then nerf Hollow Bow a little bit. I think that would be perfectly solid. So that's where I'm at. Like we just have to, I mean, Riot just has to B patch more if. They have to be okay B-patching because, and I didn't even really talk about this, but there's this lag, right? The reason why this patch looks very strange is because there's a lag, right? They have to lock in the changes for this patch, a few days before the patch actually comes out. And that leads to stuff like this happening. I mean, I know exactly why this patch looks so strange because they locked changes for this when Vex was not as dominant of a comp, when Brand was doing better. Like that's the reasoning why that this patch is going to come out the way it is. And we live in that world, like because we live in that world, you have to be more open to be patching, and that's just the world that we live in, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Snooty Boo also, dude, he's so emotional actually, really, because I think he at this point he was obviously like a lock to win the tournament with his third, and so he's losing his mind. And this is great. This is a perfect spot for me to stop once I've said my piece. So let me know what you guys think about it. Like I said, the really obvious solution to me, and it's so obvious that I think it's silly, but I mean I want to hear from you guys as well. Maybe you guys have other thoughts on other solutions. Obviously I'm sure the people at Riot know. Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. Maybe some more communication would be cool, understanding why there was no B patch for this patch, because I do think it certainly rose to the level, especially with how important it was competitively, this patch, that the fact that it was this bad is crazy to me. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think down below. I like these kind of discussion type videos so I can hear from you guys as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, as always, please, check out my links, follow my Twitch, sub to my Metafy, or get coaching through there if you'd like. And I'll see you guys later. I don't know if I want to do another VOD on this patch. Maybe if I find a really cool VOD, I'll do it. If not, tomorrow's video will probably be a patch rundown, and then Tuesday's video will probably be a game on the new patch. So we'll hop into the new patch. Hey, even if it's not the best patch, it'll at least be a change, which is always good. So see you guys then. Bye-bye.